Okay, this is Wendy Gorski with ISM. I am a Sage 100 consultant. I'm hoping all of you can see my screen. If somebody can let me know they can, that'd be great. I do not have Sherry with me today to help me kind of navigate some of this, so she's at Sage Summit. That's going on this week. So we're going to take a look today at just increasing efficiency in your processes within Sage. We'll be looking at streamlining data entry functions, reducing duplication, and automating some of those communications. So some of the things we'll be looking at in streamlining data is looking at hotkeys, kind of get that hand off the mouse, save the arm if at all possible, and also just make things go a little faster. We'll be looking at custom lookups. We also taking a look at streamlining some general ledger journal entries, accounts payable invoice data entry, accounts receivable invoice data entry, and commission tracking. In addition, we will be looking at reducing duplication in sales order entry, purchase order entry, and within purchase order we will look at auto-generating purchase orders. We'll be taking a look at also setting up some reporting defaults. And lastly, we'll be looking at automating communication with our customers and our vendors using our paperless office functionality by sending sales order confirmations, invoices, and accounts receivable statements, in addition to being able to send purchase orders to vendors. If at any point in time you have a question, feel free to go ahead and place that in the chat menu, and I will be watching for questions. Also want to just remind people, as I am recording this, to be careful with outside interferences, and if you have to leave the webinar for any reason, disconnect the call and do not place this on hold, or we will end up hearing your music. So one of the first things I wanted to share with people is the aspect of having hotkeys. I actually have a document here that I can send to everyone who is in attendance today of the hotkey functionalities that are available within the Sage 100 system to make things go a little faster. One thing to keep in mind is anywhere where you see an underlined character on a menu, such as under Accept or Cancel, it is Alt and that underlined character. So to accept a data entry, you can say Alt-A rather than grabbing your mouse and clicking the button. Canceling, deleting, even printing, such as like printing off a sales order or a picking sheet, you can just hit Alt-P. Previewing, etc. When you get those little OK buttons, you can hit Alt-O, again, rather than hitting the button. So this is actually 4 pages long, so there's lots of little hotkey functionalities, as you can see, that can help. And also, if you're ever wondering, what does that button do? This document is really kind of a nice, handy feature to be able to look at and figure out what a button does. So I'll be using some of those functionalities as I get going. So if you're kind of wondering, oh, wait a minute, I didn't see what she did, some of the times I will go ahead and use those hotkey functionalities. So in addition to hotkeys and such, we can also create custom lookups. And I'd also cover custom lookups in my customization webinar. And custom lookups are really nice to, if you are constantly looking up the same things in the same way, creating a custom lookup will decrease the keystrokes to be able to look up a list that you always want to look up. So for instance, anywhere where you see a magnifying glass, we know that that's the entire list of our options. Here is my chart of accounts. I have created a custom list here. You can see normally there's standard view. This is what most people will see out of the box. And I've created a custom lookup. To create a custom lookup in any screen, it is simply choose the custom button that you see in the lookup and walk through the wizard to create that lookup. You give it a description. I've created it my default view. In this case, I can actually say I want to create a new view, and I'm going to just call it list. I can make it my default or not. I can select next. Everything on the left-hand side is the information that is available to you. Everything on the right is the information that will be displayed in your lookup. So in this case, I don't care about status. I want account and description. In some cases, there's certain reports that you have to use the raw account rather than the regular account functionality. Also, I might want to see a date in which I have created a particular account. This comes in handy when you're doing report writing, such as using Sage Intelligence, BizNet, Renovo, and or the old FRX, which is going away. But if you find that your financials are not tying to your general ledger, it's a nice way to be able to say, well, let's see if I've created a new account and I need to add that to my templates for my reports. It's always kind of like that. I can push things up, and this is the order in which the things will display in the columns. The asterisks, anything with an asterisk says you have to have it. You cannot remove it. And so I like the order that I have here. I'm going to say next. This information is not important to me. You can set up filters right here if that's something you'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and name it, whatever you'd like to name it, in this case a GL account list. And then here I'm going to say, rather than looking up by my account number, I'd like to look up by the description, and instead of begins with, I want to say contains. And now when I'm looking up a particular account, say I want to look up something, I need to know my office supplies account. I can just put in the simple SUPP or just some portion of what I think the account's called, hit enter, and then it's like, there's my account, 6070, that's the one I'm looking for. And it makes things a lot faster. So that is just a brief aspect on lookups. You can create lookups in the GL, AP vendor list lookups, customer list lookups, all kinds of, anywhere where you see that magnifying glass. So next I want to share general ledger, creating some general ledgers, journal entries that you are continually using over and over every month when you do your closing. And rather than hand entering all that information in, we're going to save things as what I call a template, and we're going to recall that information. So if I want to create a journal entry, I just come into General Ledger Journal Entry, and I go ahead and choose my source journal that I want to use. In this case, I liked JE for journal entry. I go ahead and assign my next number, and I can put in my date. I can put in a description. So in this case, I'm going to create, I think I want to do a prepaid expense. I go to my lines tab. I go ahead and put in my account numbers. In this case, I am going to move some information from my prepaid. So I've paid for it previously. Want to go ahead now and charge it to my expense. So I'm going to pull it out of my prepaid expense, and I'm going to charge it to the expense account this time. There we go. And you might actually have lots of different accounts here. So in this case, I have -10. So I might put here $50. And for Department 10, I might put 25. And again, for Department 20, it's 30 for them. Whoop. And my next account is Department 40, and I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to take the bulk of this expense. And 6025, last department I have is Department 80. So I have created my normal journal entry here. If I want to save it as a standard journal entry to recall for the future, I can go ahead and say Save as Standard and give it some kind of a description. So I'm going to put in prepaids, monthly distribution. And I go ahead and I can save the comments or not save the comments. It's your choice. And accept. Now I'm going to go ahead and post this particular journal entry possibly for this time around, or I can actually recall it, and I will show you how to recall that journal entry. So I'm going to cancel this. We're going to pretend it's next month. I want to actually start doing my month-end journal entries. I go ahead and assign my journal entry. I put in my date. And now I go ahead and I want to recall it from, so you can say, this is another functionality. You can say copy from a standard journal entry, and you can pull up. Here's my list that I created. And you notice it gave me all of my accounts, but I can change the dollars. So this month around, my prepaid expense was $8.15 that I'm going to go ahead and spread down. I go ahead and make that spread and then accept like any other journal entry. But notice I didn't have to now put in all of those accounts. And so that it's as simple as that. You can create all kinds of standard journal entries. I've created them for prepaid expense, wages accruals. I'll create one for that. Prepaid property taxes, anything that you every month are making some kind of an accrual entry or reclassification. Go ahead and create that journal entry. Again, save it as standard, and then when you go to want to recall it the next month, you just use that copy from and choose it from your standard listing. Copy from my standard list, and you'll see all of the ones you've created right in here. Choose the one that you want, put in your dollars, accept, and post like any other journal entry. Any questions on that? The next aspect of creating journal entries, we know that if we have an entry that we need to make that is going to hit a bank account, and we also want it to be able to record in our bank reconciliation, we don't want to make those journal entries through general journal entry. Sage has actually provided transaction journal entry for those things that we want to hit the bank statement. So in this case, I might have a particular sweep. Maybe I have a money market account that I'm constantly moving money between my checking, my operating account, and my money market account. And I don't want to have to rebuild it every single time. So I might actually come in and create, and we'll see if I have a source journal. In this particular guy, I got bank charges, reconciliation. Sometimes I make a special source journal for using for a particular journal entry that I might want to do. So in this case, I think I do want to create a source journal, and I want to use it to every time I pull that up, I want to pull the same thing. If you want to create a source journal, you come into Setups within your General Ledger module, Setup, and we go to Source Journal Maintenance. And now I need to make sure that I don't copy a code. So let's call it FT maybe? Yeah, let's call it FT. FT for funds transfer. And in this particular case, it is a financial journal entry. I'm going to start it with JE numbers 1. I accept, close that, come to my journal entry. I say FT. I assign my next entry number. Notice it's pulled in my comment from the source journal. So I want to record a funds transfer. To set this particular transfer up in this transaction, hit your Format button, and we want to be able to say, okay, which count am I going to hit? So in this case, I'm going to say, well, I'm always moving money. This particular one, I'm going to say it's from checking, and so I'm going to actually credit checking, and I can say I do want to use a transaction total, which will activate the transaction total on the screen behind us, right underneath the date. It will force me to put in a value there, good checks and balances. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a bank transfer, and I'm going to say I want this to show up within my bank code, and I'm going to say bank code A. I need to make sure it matches. I think it's B. Transfer funds to bank code, and I can say this might be my sweep account. So that way it's going to show up in both places. And my names were a little bit different there, but so now I go to I can right here record a transfer number. So I'm going to say we are going to sweep $10,000 from this account. I'm going to put in a transfer number. Sometimes you can use a document date. So on 2015-07-28, I went ahead and transferred. Sometimes your banks will give you a document number, and you can use that as well. And again, I might use my date as my document reference. And I can see I used my wrong bank code. This is instead of my, so you can see on the C, it's pulling in the account that it knows C is tied to. So I'd have to choose whichever one I actually made my sweep account to. And then you put in a value, and then you accept. Now, every time that I come back in and I choose FT, it's going to go ahead and pull all of that information up. Once I've updated it, it remembers. And you can see it's remembering some of this information. And so that way you don't have to fill out all of that. Oh, is it the credit side? Is it the debit side? Some people will make an FA for bank code A, which means I'm always going to debit or I'm always going to credit. So you can just kind of think about that using your source journal code to format a particular entry that you are making quite frequently. So that's how to save transaction journal entries that are going to go hit your bank accounts and things that you're going to use over and over again. Any questions on the GL side? Okay, my next company aspect of creating just some streamlining and efficiency aspects is to look at accounts payable. And in accounts payable, we can go ahead and turn on a couple of functionalities that will enable things to go a little smoother. And one of those things is if you go into AP Setup, Accounts Payable Options, we have what is called a distribution table. So we enable expense distribution tables. I've turned it on. I typically do not go ahead and say, oh, I want to allow for my distribution to be less than 100%. I prefer things to be at 100%, and I cannot think of a reason why that might happen, but everybody wants things a little differently. So once I have turned on the expense distribution tables, I accept. And when you change your options, you need to make sure that everyone is out of accounts payable. All your users are out, and you can check that by coming up to your little blue monitor screen to see who's in here and where they at, and oh, so-and-so is in accounts payable, so I'm going to go ask her to get out, and then I will change that. So you can enable your expense distribution table maintenance. Now what I can go ahead and do is I can enter in an accounts payable invoice, and so I'm going to create my batch, and I need to find my vendor for, let's say it's electricity. So vendor number, here's one of those places where I might want to create a custom lookup by name and contains. Okay, so I'm going to create an invoice for my particular, this is my electric bill, and I want to spread it across all of my departments. So if I want to spread across my departments, then I can come back once I have enabled my expense distribution table. I can come down and set one up. So here's my expense distribution table maintenance within the setup menu. And I'm going to call this electric. And here I just put in my accounts and my percentages that I want to spread my electric bill across to all my different departments. Overall corporate is going to get 5%. Department 10, they'll get 10%. Department 20, they get 20%. These guys get 10%. And these guys get 25%. And let's see. Whoop. These guys get the remaining 30%. So I have distributed to 100% across my different departments. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter in the invoice. And we'll say this particular invoice was for June, and my electric bill was $2,500. Don't you wish? And now here, notice this expense distribution table has been turned on. And now I can hit my magnifying glass, choose the particular table I want to use for this vendor, hit my lines, and it's automatically distributed for me. If I choose to, I can go ahead and modify any of these numbers. And the moment that you modify them, you're going to then have to redistribute any little value. So if I say, well, I'm going to make this 700, now I got $50 to redistribute out to somebody else, and these guys were actually 300. And so if you want to make those changes in here, you can, or go back into your expense distribution table and make the change within the percentage allocation if it's something that is permanent. I go ahead and accept, and I update as usual. So these kinds of expense distribution tables are really nice for electric, gas, water, cell phone bills, telephone bills, where you're allocating by a percentage out across different departments and or accounts. In addition, if you're like, well, that isn't really a hard percentage, but you can still use an expense distribution table to populate those account numbers to save you from entering all the account numbers, and then just enter in your dollar values because sometimes it's like, well, for my telephone bill, Bob and Dan and John, their phone bills equal this. Well, that's not a percentage. And then so-and-so's, Jane's bill was that, and um, Dawn's bill was this, and so it might not be a percentage, but at least you can get the account numbers in there, and then you can change things. Any questions on the distribution table maintenance? Okay. So next, I want to talk about accounts receivable. And accounts receivable functionality, we have the ability to enter invoices that repeat. And sometimes this is good if you have a particular like if maybe you charge monthly fees, or maybe you have one of your divisions or whatever has rent that you have to send invoices out to, or maybe there's an intercompany functionality that you're constantly sending invoices back and forth between each other. You can actually create accounts receivable invoices that are repetitive in nature, and then you don't have to re-enter all of that information over and over again. So if I want to create a repetitive invoice situation, I would come into repetitive invoice entry. And you'll notice this screen looks ever so slightly different than your normal invoice data entry. And I'll pull that up. The difference between the two is in this one you have a reference. In this one you do not. So in my repetitive invoice data entry, what I would come into here and say, well, for my customer, whoops, oh, I need to find a customer. Well, I'll just grab that first one. And you then can create a reference here, and this reference can be a number or alpha. It's whatever you want to choose it to be. And then you may or may not have a purchase order number. Sometimes you can use this purchase order number internally, and then you can see it in your AR customer screen. And so you might use it for yourself, or you can use it for the customer, whatever they've provided. In here, I would go ahead and supply a cycle that I might be doing these invoices. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and assign MO, because I'm going to create a whole bunch of invoices that I'm going to run monthly. It says, when do you want to start this particular billing? And so in this case, I might say, well, I'm going to start them on June 1st. And we've gone ahead and given this particular company a contract, but that contract only takes them through the 31st and renews every year. So you can then have it come back at you and say, hey, you've got a expired billing, or you can stop billing them. You can still assign salespeople to this, etc. You come to your lines, and now you can go ahead and enter in a miscellaneous item code, for instance. So we can say, see what I got in here. I'll just grab that. And then quantity you can use, and then however much you're going to charge them. So once you have created all of these invoices, your customer number, your reference number, and then you can go ahead and save them. Then you can go ahead and say, well, I want to do my repetitive invoice selection now. So although I've done a repetitive invoice entry, we're not posting from there. We actually pull up repetitive invoice selection, and using that cycle, I can come in here and say, I want to pull up all of my invoices and pay and run invoices for everybody that I assigned a cycle code to of MO. Or maybe you actually want to do it by customer number. You can enter in your customer number ranges here. And so there's different things here, and even the reference is also another way that you can pull things. So just think about how you might want to do that. This is great for warranties, maintenance that you might have to charge customers for some kind of maintenance fee. So just different things like that come up all the time. I'll go ahead and say I want to go ahead and run this particular one with a July 1st date, and it always defaults to the date that your system is. And then I hit the proceed button. And then I can go ahead and launch the journals and registers from my printer icon. So I don't have invoices set up. And then you'll go ahead and have your invoices. There they are. Now, say there's some things that you want to go ahead and change on those invoices. I just come into invoice data entry now. Let's see where it's at. I think I had to run my selection register. And they'll show up in invoice data entry for you to go ahead and modify if you need to change them ever so slightly or add a little something. And it probably knows I'm not printing. There we go. And then you walk through the whole process. There's my register. That, an error log. So just think about if you have anything. It's not a real common thing that we find that out of Sage you're constantly re-invoicing people for certain things. But service charges and things like that, they do come up. And you just go ahead and post as normal, and you're done. Any questions on repetitive invoice data entry? The other thing that we have found is a lot of times commissions are being tracked and in Excel or some whole reporting functionality, but we actually have the ability to set up commissions and such within the system accounts receivable. And this feeds up from sales order if you're invoicing out of sales order. So if you'll come into the setups functionality, and my commissions is on tab 2, I go ahead and I've turned it on, and then I say if whether or not I want to pay commissions paid upon invoices or not, and how that particular commission, is it on the net invoice, is it on gross profit? And then you can go ahead and maintain your invoice tracking or your commission tracking from your invoices through the AR system. If you have a complicated commission structure, it's a little bit more difficult to deal with, but there is a commission edit maintenance and things like that that you can go into and modify the commissions. You can go ahead and run them from here, and you can edit them here. So you can, and this also requires that your accounts receivable periods be closed in a timely manner. So if you're sitting on your AR and it's been open for 6 months, your reports aren't going to be accurate. But if you're pretty good about closing those periods, then you're going to get some pretty good information in here. and then you go ahead and can run them. You can also create split commissions, which was something that wasn't available in the older versions, but you can go into customer maintenance, and when you assign a particular so here I've assigned Carol Burnett as the salesperson to Willamette Valley Company, and I've said, well, I want to be able to split this commission. So Carol, instead of her being 100%, I'm going to say, well, I think Harvey actually oversees Carol on this particular account, and so he's going to get a little piece of it. He gets 5% of this commission. She gets the remaining 95%. And you can actually spread commissions across 4. So you might have district managers and then regional managers that get a little piece as well. So that is also a functionality that's great, and you can set that up. So if you have more questions about commissions, because it does take some thoughtful processes, we can help you with that and look at how to set it up, and then also show you how to edit those commissions if you need to before you actually run the reports and then send them on over to your payroll company. But it's something that a lot of people don't realize, that we do have a functionality to track our commissions. Okay, so now let's talk about streamlining in our sales order functionality. So in sales order entry, we have the ability, instead of always creating a standard order, you can actually create master orders or repeating orders. So here is where you have a customer that comes to you and says, you know what, if you give me special pricing, or maybe you offer special pricing, and if your customer says, we want to buy 10,000 pounds, or we want to buy 1,000 of these widgets, or whatever it is that you sell, but we don't want to take delivery on them all at once. We want to just kind of whittle away at an order. So you can create a master order and then go ahead and bring up your customer, and they're going to give you their PO number. And then you can go to lines. You can put in everything that they're going to order. So in this case, let's see, he's going to order some bulk corn. Maybe. There we go. And we're gonna. They said that they're gonna go ahead and order 1,000 pounds of this, and then they're gonna order. And I don't know why it's doing that. They're going to order 1,000 pounds of this, and then then there's like, okay, go ahead and ship 50 pounds of the corn, 50 pounds of this, 50 pounds of that, or whatever that is that they're ordering. Then you can pull in this master order when you create a sales order. So I've got my sales order. So here's my sales order. It's a brand new order. It's going to be a standard order this time, but I'm going to pull it back up from that master order that I've created. It pulls everything in for me, pulls it here, and here I'm going to say, well, instead of the 1,000, they're going to get the 50. And so you don't have to enter in all of this information over and over again. You can use a master order. The other aspect is I might want to have a repeating order. So maybe you have customers that order virtually the same thing over and over again. It's kind of hit and miss. It's not on a schedule, but they just pretty much order the same things, and they give you a call, and they know that your lead time might be 7 days or whatever to ship out. You can enter in a repeating order for your customer, putting in the same information, whatever it is that they're ordering. And now, instead of starting over from scratch, so you would actually come in and save this repeating order, and then come back in and pull that in using the standard order, and just creates a template. Here's the beauty of master and repeating orders. They don't affect inventory. So until you actually pull this template in, whether it be a master or a repeating order, and you pull that in and you make a standard order and you make your modifications, does that actually affect inventory? In the meantime, it's just a template for you to use and reduce your data entry. Any questions on master and repeating order? Okay, the next thing that we have is in purchase order, and you can do this very similar aspects within the purchase order process. Maybe you order from your particular vendors things that are very similar quantities, on a schedule, not on a schedule. You can go ahead and create master orders that you just pull back up through standard order, pull the master order, make a few tweaks to it, and send it off to your vendor. Or maybe you order very similar things over and over again, and you can create a repeating order as well. And those are kind of a nice way to, again, reduce data entry, especially if your purchase orders are really long for some of your vendors. So keep those in mind. And then also in the purchase order process, you can actually do a purchase order auto reorder functionality. And in the purchase order auto generate, so you can say, well, I want to, you can use their auto reorder selection or auto generate. If you have a lot of sales orders that you're sitting on, and you want to be able to make sure that you've got the stock on hand and such, you can come in and choosing some different selections here. So my sales order status, I want to say I only want to pull from my open orders or maybe my hold orders. They're on hold maybe because you don't have the inventory open, or maybe just brand new orders and not open orders, and you want to see if you need to pull anything in. And you can say, what are my procurement types? I just want to buy my raw materials from contractors or from my vendors that I buy from, etc. Product types, I'm just looking to order finished goods, or I need to make sure that I've got my raw goods, my raw materials. And so you can fine-tune this selection based upon what you might need. Once you have all of your selection here, you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say I want you to generate a purchase order based upon only the quantity that I require. So the system's going to say, okay, I have 100 in stock. I see you've got 50 on a sales order. So but you've put a reorder point. You say in your inventory module, if I fall below 100, order 100, or whatever you might put in your reorder points within inventory. It's going to go back out there and make those determinations for you, rather than you popping in and out of all of those inventories or running stock status reports that are 200 pages long and trying to figure out where you're at. Reorder quantity for just a main warehouse possibly, or set my purchase orders to be able to, I only want my purchase order to order the quantity just in time functionality as to what I see that's on my sales order that I'm running low on. So you can choose all of those things, and then once you're all done making your settings, you hit proceed, and then print, and it will actually provide you a report and I don't have anything that it needs based upon my selection. It will provide you a report that says, okay, this is what you need to order, and do you really want to order these or not? And you can mass select to create lots of purchase orders, or then you can say, nope, okay, clear that, and now I know exactly where I need to focus. And I'm not trying to hit a very broad target, and a report will provide you that information. And I do highly recommend it for inventory management, that you come into inventory and you set your reorder points if at all possible, especially on stuff that you move frequently. So you might have a certain product line or items that you are constantly moving through. You can come up here and choose reorder and set these reorder points. And these reorder points then talk to that purchase order module functionality and will help your buyers especially make sure that you don't end up having to back order stuff, and that's a potential lost sale if you can't fulfill it. So putting those reorder points in is very important to streamlining functionality. So lastly, I want to talk about our paperless functionality. And a lot of people think about, oh, paperless is primarily just saving those registers and those journals so I don't have to sit on binders and file cabinets full of all of that paperwork. But it's a lot more. In our paperless functionality, we actually have the ability to set up to be able to send off invoices to our customers. So in doing so, we need to first make sure that that's turned on. So I'd go into paperless office options and make sure that you have set up. So I have electronically deliver. I've turned on, say I want to be able to deliver forms, and that's both to my customers and my vendors. And I want to save my journals and registers. And I accept. And then I come down to form maintenance. I open up that. And in here, I would go ahead and I could say, okay, so I want to be able to send purchase orders out. I can save them as documents, typically on your server. And then you would create an electronic delivery message, again, in their setups. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, I want to send my vendor forms, and this is just for my company, and my module being purchase order. Got sales order set up. And then, that's because I chose customer vendor forms. There we go. Purchase order forms. And what is the documents that you want to send to your vendors? Just my orders. And then in here, you can create a, it's almost like a field merge. So I've created this little guy, and I say purchase order and document number. That means my PO number is going to populate in the subject line, and then my vendor number and my questions. And here's all the fields available to you in the merge aspect of things. So I just came in, typed in, vendor, whoever my vendor is for the purchase order. Attached, please find my order number 1234 placed on July 28, 2015. Questions regarding this order, please call, etc., etc. And so I have that information in here. Now, when I create a purchase order, if my vendor is set up, I have my vendor. I want something more glamorous than those guys. Anyway, so you can come in here and you have a couple of things to do. In your contacts, put in your contact. In the contact code, I do not recommend that you put in B. Jones because it's Bob Jones who I'm buying stuff from. I actually recommend that your contact code be something more generic as far as what their title might be. And then I can put in Bob Jones here because we have a very migrant society, and most people only stay in their job about 3 years. So Bob might be there, and then you might be working with Bob maybe 6 months to a year, and then it's Sally who comes in. And Sally Thomas, she's your new person. So in this case, you don't have a dead contact code. You've actually just changed this to Sally Thomas. You put in her information. Maybe her information is the same as Bob's, whatever. And so you've got that information in here, and then you accept. And then once you've set up your contacts, you come to paperless, and you hit that little button. I want to send my purchase orders. I want to email my purchase orders to Adecco. And so I can come in over to here and choose who's going to get that email. And I accept. Now, if I do a purchase order to this particular vendor, the system's going to know to be able to go ahead and email that out. Same with customers. So you would set up the form maintenance to make sure that you have set up the ability to send your orders and invoices to your customers. Come into the electronic delivery message, and I'm going to send my customer invoices. There we go. And then I could go ahead and build in it may not like my subject here attached as a document, but you can clean that up. Thank you for your order, and then thank you for your order, and then insert company name, yada, 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 put in all this information, and then I want my document date, and you just build that in here. And there's a little funky thing going on with Microsoft here, but and build your whole functionality in here, and thank you if you have questions, yada, 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 all that stuff. And then that's going to populate in the email when you go ahead and process your invoices to your customers. And then at the point that you send those invoices, so when you come into invoice printing and paperless functionality is turned on, it will know. Normally it's going to ask me, do you want to print or not, but in this case, because I don't have my form set up, I might need to go to another company. It will ask you, do you want to just print? Do you want to just electronically deliver? Or do you want to both print and electronically deliver? And in that case, when you answer that question, it says, okay, for anybody that I know is going to electronically deliver, I'm going to electronically deliver that. Oh, this one I don't have an email for, I'm going to print that invoice, they're probably going to mail it. And the system can be smart for you in determining what needs to be printed, what needs to be electronically delivered. And it will go ahead and do that for you. And in that, because we find a lot of times people are coming in, they're re-pulling up a particular invoice or saving them to PDF files and then opening up their Outlook and then sending them that way. And that's very time consuming. But if you can build those contacts, build your form maintenance, it will go ahead and do all of that for you. And the last few things I have time for is to just briefly discuss some other options for you. If you process sales tax, there is a product for, the company's called Avalara. They produce Avatax. It interfaces directly with Sage. You hardly even see it, but it processes sales tax right down to the address level. So it will process the local taxes, the county taxes, the state taxes for you. Great for reporting, all of that stuff. Web interface, so Avatax is a great thing. Starship is one of our products for shipping. If you do a lot of shipping and you want to try and automate some of the process with maybe scanning barcodes on your products, or even scanning barcodes for the order numbers, things like that, tracking, if your customers and or you require tracking, Starship will track all of that information. They automatically automate the whole process of keeping track of USPS rates when they change, which is quite often. your contract rates with UPS, your contract rates with Federal Express. If you use some of the larger trucking companies such as Conway or different freight line something, most likely they have a relationship with them as well, and that also can be inputted, and Starship is just a great product. Also, if you have a web store, Starship is great for that as well. And then lastly, for inventory management, a better view of being able to see things almost at a dashboard functionality is Sage Inventory Advisor. So I just highly recommend that you guys keep a track on our Lunch and Learns in the future. We'll be offering Avatac, Starship, Sage Inventory Advisor, and many other custom office, things like that, more webinars to come in the future that can help you better utilize your Sage system. And I thank you for attending today. If you have any questions, please let me know. If I can help you with anything as far as some of the setups like that you saw here today, give us a call and I'll be happy to help you.